What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. As always, brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. Get your pizza nationwide, anywhere. Jake Micah, joined by the one, the only, Mike Bunt. Mike has been on site not only today, but earlier in the week, I believe Sunday, right, at training camp. So we're here to break down all the insights, everything we can get out of Mike, squeeze out of him from what he's seen at practice that he's allowed to talk about. As we know, we can't talk about everything, but I'm going to try to get as much out as we can. We're going to have a good talk. And Mike, I've been gone. I've been in the Upper Peninsula, very spotty cell service in northern Michigan near Lake Superior. So I've been getting my updates through Twitter like the rest of us, following along on Trainwreck, following along with all the great Bills content creators that are out there and that have been at practice and everything else. And I'm excited to have a convo, and you kind of let me know where the boys are at camp. But how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's been a long day. Woke up at 6, drove to Rochester, covered camp, and now finally back home in Hamburg. So really long day, but I am very excited to talk about it with you right now.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Can't wait. So I want to give you the floor to start here because you were at camp today. And I just want to give you the reins here to kind of go where you want, what your biggest impression was from today at camp. Before we get into the topic of like the camp as a whole, we had a good practice today. Saw a lot of hype around Khalil Shakir. That's how tired I am. Khalil Shakir and his day, and some Khair Elam reps looking good today. So what was your biggest insights that you saw live at training camp?
Yeah, so I've been at 2 practices, have covered 2 so far. I was there on Sunday and then here today. The offense looks incredible early on in camp. 7 practices so far, and the 2 that I've seen, Josh Allen has just been dialed in. No Stephon Diggs, no problem for this offense. Ooh. And that was kind of the focus of the press conference, not Diggs, but how there is now a plethora of receivers with different skill sets. We've been talking about the best basketball mentality at receiver ever since the Bills drafted Keon Coleman. I remember at that point in time, we were talking about having power forwards and centers. And today, during the press conference, Josh Allen actually alluded to having shooting guards, power forwards, centers. So Josh is even starting to talk about the basketball mentality of knowing your defined role in the offense. And when you start to look at the guys that they have on the outside, then in the slot, at running back, at tight end, it makes it really difficult for defenses to not only match up against this Bills offense, but to really know what they're going to do on a play-by-play basis. So really my biggest takeaway so far early in camp is that this offense, for having a lack of continuity, looks really sharp early on. Now, the run game, they just put pads on a few days ago, hasn't looked great. But as far as getting the ball, spreading the wealth, you're seeing everyone involved at this point in time. Keon Coleman has flashed. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins has made plays. So we're seeing Khalil Shakir make plays. It's been everybody in this passing attack early. So a lot of positives for this Bills offense, as many would expect when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback.
I love to hear everything about that. Has there been, I mentioned Shakir earlier, but in your days at practice and from what you've seen, has there been somebody, it can be Shakir if that's who it is, has there been somebody in particular that has popped to you though, for any reason, not just plays on the field, if you just like, oh man, like if Coleman is just a better athlete than you even imagine, like what has kind of popped from the receiver room that you've really noticed and that's kind of caught your eye every time you're there?
Yeah, it's been kind of multiple people. So far, Coleman has looked pretty solid to me. Now, there are times he doesn't get separation like we've heard in his pre-draft tape, but he can still make incredible plays, as we all know. He's made some nice he had a nice touchdown today in the corner of the end zone, and then he had a nice play where it was probably a 25 to 30-yard reception with, I believe, Rasul Douglas on him. So Allen is getting Keon Coleman involved. Curtis Samuel is all over the place. You see him getting jet sweeps. You see him getting the ball as a running back. He's making catches. He had a touchdown run earlier in practice today. Khalil Shakir, primary guy in the slot. He had an impressive touchdown catch earlier today. He's going to get a bunch of footballs this season. But even the tight ends, we know Dalton Kincaid is going to get his, so really no point going deep into that. Kincaid has impressed when I've seen him. He had a nice touchdown catch today. He bobbled it for a second, but brought it in. It was tight coverage, but it was an impressive hand-eye coordination for him. And even Dawson Knox, when I was there on Sunday, it was evident they are still going to utilize him a bunch in this offense. Is he going to be a 50-catch guy on this team? Probably not, but I still envision Dawson Knox going to be a guy that's going to be around 30-plus catches in this offense. He's still seeing the field quite a bit. So the spreading of the wealth, it's an exciting thing because I think in previous years there was a little bit too maybe not enough of that, a little bit too much feeding certain individuals. And now I don't know if they go into any given play saying we have to target this guy. I think now they have a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, you got to ask Josh a question about the weapons and everything, and it was kind of a topic that that he was touching on all day today about his receivers. That it is the mantra at the beginning of the summer was everybody eats, and it really feels like they've been living up to that every day in camp. I feel like every time I see a report, it's somebody else getting a touchdown. I know I see an MVS have some big plays. Curtis Samuel early on in camp had a really good day. Obviously, I mentioned Shakir having a really good day. We've seen highlights from Coleman. I love to hear about the usage of Knox still being involved there. Do you think that this is going to be another year where we're talking a lot about 12 personnel, 11 personnel, or is it going to be, do you have the feel that they're kind of getting everything ready where they can come at a team basically and be adaptable and attack them whatever way is the weakness of the defense? If that calls for heavy sets with two tight ends and taking advantage of linebackers, so be it. If it calls for spreading them out and using the various weapons they have on the outside and kind of, because they got guys that are movable pieces, right? We've seen Shakir, I believe, mostly in the slot, but I think there's been some Coleman in the slot. We've seen Hollins, Samuel, and Coleman all on the outside. We've seen MVS out there. They've given a lot of looks so far. I know you probably can't talk about the specific looks that they've given, but do you think that that's kind of still the idea of how Joe Brady is going to attack defenses when we get to Sundays later on this year?
Yeah, my feeling is that Joe Brady is going to have a week-by-week approach. He could be heavy run one week if a team is giving it to him, and then do the exact opposite the next week and throw the ball 40 times if that's what the game plan calls for. Brady is a person that is going to attack what defenses give him and what their weaknesses are. So 12 personnel, it's definitely still going to be part of this offense. And I think it should be part of this offense. When you have two quality tight ends in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, you absolutely need to utilize 12 personnel. Now, do you need to use it all the time? Probably not. But I think Dawson Knox, when he spoke at the presser on Sunday, he made a really good point about when he was hurt last year, he tried to battle through it for a while, and it really did impact his performance. Then he comes back. They made the offensive coordinator change, Dorsey out. Then Joe Brady enters, and things kind of changed a little bit with how they finished the year. Now they eventually got hot and won a lot of games, but down the stretch, the offense was a little bit different. Yes, it was Dorsey's offense still, but things weren't really being run the same way. So I think Dawson Knox envisions himself coming back and being a better version of himself while fully healthy. And this Bills team, they have the adaptability now with what they have talent-wise to really be able to switch things up. If they want to be a heavy passing team, they have the guys in the passing game to do it. They want to run the ball with James Cook, Ray Davis. I think they have the confidence they could do that as well. So it's exciting because I don't know what you're going to see on a week-to-week basis.
That is very exciting, and it's a new look, and it's something that we haven't. It's a fresh look for the team that while was still very good, we knew what to expect from them. And I feel like coming into this year offensively, there's a lot of unknowns, but that's kind of a good thing because we still have Josh Allen at quarterback, and you have the utmost confidence in him to make it happen. And the talent, I think, has looked good from what I can see, from what you're telling me, from everything I've been reading, and that it's not like this is some bum group of receivers out there. I think I think Bill Barnwell ranked him 24th in weapons or anything like that. Just doesn't feel like this group is going to be that, especially with the play of the quarterback so far in camp. How about Josh? Like, I've heard that he's been looking just really sharp pretty much every day. Obviously, some turnovers here and there are going to happen, especially in camp and practice and everything else.
Really hasn't been much.
Not much.
There was the 3 interceptions and 4 throws to end Friday's practice. And since that point, Josh has really limited his turnovers overall. I didn't see any on Sunday while I was there and didn't see any today. If there were some, I might have missed it, but the turnovers really have not been an issue at all during camp. The offense, to me, it's been pretty one-sided, offensively dominating the defense at the practices I have been at. I can't really speak for the other practices that I wasn't there for, but Josh has been electric, and that's kind of been the story that I've been talking about on my podcast and my videos. Is just he looks dialed in. If there were any questions about how was he going to look without Stephon Diggs, or how was he going to look without Gabe Davis, I think early on the answer is still pretty damn good. And it almost feels like, in a way, he feels more free having this offense where there is no defined number one. So to me, the possibilities are endless for what they have right now. There could be the question, is the defense as good as we think it is? But it's early in camp. Who knows? That's something to worry about later on in August. But so far, it's been a little bit one-sided overall.
Well, and the usual adage of a training camp is the defense is going to be ahead of the offense to start. But when you have this many moving pieces on the defense, especially on the back end, we're going to talk about the safety position in a minute here. But specifically, those two guys who have been there forever don't need to learn anything, don't need to pick up anything new. And there's a lot of guys learning the system, getting acclimated with everything that McDermott and Babich want to do, and getting Matt Milano back to full speed. I'm sure I think from all accounts, he's looked pretty good out there, looked like he's recovering pretty well and everything, but still getting back from an injury and everything else. And the way this offense is, yes, there's new pieces to the offense too, but if Allen's dialed in, he's going to make it work. And if it's giving the defense trouble, it's just because 17, like you said, is really dialed in right now. And I think that's the vibe I've gotten from him too. It's kind of just like a no nonsense. Like I hear blocking out the noise. He knows all the noise, but kind of blocking it out, and knows like he needs to be. He even mentioned it. I can't remember who the interview was with, but just about being a different type, like how much he wants to be one of the guys, but realizes now kind of the leadership position he has to be in, not just for the team, but the whole organization. I just feel like that maturity has shown through a lot with how he's carried himself in coming into this camp and how he's come just ready to go. Like, I mean, I think you could throw him out there for week 1 and he'd be ready to go right now. And that's a credit to him and his professionalism and all the nonsense talk about, oh, does Josh do enough in the summer? Is he even working out? Oh, Mahomes is getting together with his guys. When's Josh going to do that?
Josh made a point of letting people know he did work out with his receiving core earlier this summer. So that is something that I know there's questions. Did he do it in the past? I'm not sure either way. I know there were some people that didn't think that was the case in recent years. Definitely happened this summer with this group of guys. And during the presser, the one thing I actually asked him, because he did sound really confident about all of these new weapons he had. I took the time to ask Josh, so you have basically a brand new receiving core, the only returner, Khalil Shakir. How long does it normally take to build up that chemistry? And how confident are you, based on what you see in training camp and early in the preseason, that this is what you guys really are. And he kind of answered back, some situations when you have all these new moving parts, for some teams, you're not going to have the chemistry, and it is going to take time, and you're not going to be able to click just like that. For me, from what I heard from him, it sounds like they have definitely built up a rapport in minicamp, OTAs, having time during the summer to get together. And it's been a quick process. It seems like everyone is buying into the same vision, that they're on the same page. And when you look at the guys that they brought in, you have veteran leadership. When you have a Curtis Samuel, you know he's going to do things the right way. Khalil Shakir trying to earn his stripes. A Keon Coleman looking to earn his role on the Bills. And then you bring in some not older veterans, but you bring in a Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and even a Claypool who, while coming off a rust season, is trying to prove himself out there. So there's a lot of guys that are eager to basically show what they can do. So I thought it was interesting that Allen basically was saying, yeah, they haven't been together long, but they feel like they have built something up that's pretty solid already at this point.
Yeah, man. We're August 1 today. So if they've already built that up, I can't wait to see where they're going to be.
They've already built most of the offense. He said they've already installed the majority of their offense for this season.
Wow. That's awesome. And that's a credit to those guys putting in the work. Like you mentioned, like in the offseason on their own, but also at OTAs, all being there, getting on the same page there, so that when they could come to camp, the install was ready. They all knew the verbiage. They all did their studying, crossed their T's, dotted their I's, and came in and were ready to put the work in. And then that's a credit to Joe Brady and his staff, but also, as we were talking about, Allen and the leadership, to try to be like, listen, we got to be on page right away and start fast as the season comes along. All right, that's enough about the offense. Let's get into the defense, because as you mentioned, there are some concerns. Just the way that they've looked going through this camp, and we got to start with the safety position. I know how you feel, Mike. I've seen your tweets. I've seen you're trying to. Mike,
Am I allowed to say that stuff on a podcast, or will people think I'm being too negative?
I think anything goes here. But see, I like you come out for Bills and Sabres, and I feel like you just offer some context where everybody's just flipping out. And if I see the tweets and the voice, everybody freaking out one way or the other, you've usually got a 3-tweet article thread ready to go and just be like, listen, guys, this is what this means. And I really appreciate that about you, Mike. So I know your thoughts on safety, but share it with the podcast people. We've got Mike Edwards out right now with a hamstring injury, which worries me, because more than anything, not about losing Mike Edwards, but the hamstring injuries right away in camp. Give him as much time as he needs to get ready, because if he rushes back 2 days early, that thing's going to linger and last throughout the year. And then Cole Bishop with I believe, is it still an undisclosed arm injury? I didn't see if there was any update on what the actual injury is. I do know it's an arm injury. I saw
shoulder earlier today.
Okay.
And they said week to week. Here's my thoughts on the safety room. It's far too early to be panicking about the situation, but it is a little concerning when you enter camp with a 3-player battle for a starter spot opposite of Taylor Rapp. And now 2 of those 3 players are going to be out a minimum of a few weeks, possibly longer. And one of those injuries being a hamstring that can linger, or you could tweak it and it could end up being a longer injury. And then the other one being an injury to a rookie, which we already knew that Sean McDermott was a little hesitant about playing rookies and on his defense. A little bit different with the offense, but on defense, he's a little hesitant to just forcing guys into roles. So Cole Bishop already had an uphill battle to earn a starter job out of camp. Still expected him to have some contributions early on. Now you're at the point where Damar Hamlin is the only guy that's going to be getting reps for the next few weeks. That is part of that starting competition. So there's a few things that can happen. Can Damar win the job outright based on playing very well the next few weeks? Because if he does great the next few weeks and does well in the preseason games, he probably has a leg up on that starting safety job. Or do they keep it open to Mike Edwards or Cole Bishop and hope that they possibly show up and play well when they return? The question here is with Mike Edwards is he was the presumed starter before camp. That's why they brought him in. He's gone now. So if he was in open competition, you can't just wait on Edwards to return and just say it's your job. Cole Bishop, how do you put him into a big role right away without getting some more time to see him on the field? That's a tough decision. Then you make the moves to bring in Kareem Jackson and then Burgess. Jackson was playing with the threes today, so he's clearly not getting an early opportunity to really make a name for himself. Obviously, a great track record with the Broncos and the Texans. And Burgess, he's really never really made a name for himself in his limited time in the NFL. I believe he was drafted in 2020 as a third-round pick. So
yeah, mostly special teamer.
So the dilemma that you have right now with the safety room is a lot of fans will be like, oh, it doesn't matter who's back there. McDermott's great at coaching defense, and they're going to find a way to make it work. Well, it's easy to say that when you have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer for 7 years, and they have continuity. They know the defense in and out, and they're communicating, and everybody's in the right spots. Having two amazing all-pro safeties makes life easier for the 9 guys in front of them. Makes life easier for the corners in front of them. And yes, there's truth to the entire secondary basically working together and working off of each other. But if you have Taylor Rapp, who was a backup last year and couldn't find a starter job elsewhere in the NFL, and then you have Damar Hamlin, who only played in 5 games last year, very limited action on the field defensively, or you go to Mike Edwards, who for the most part in his career has been a backup, albeit a good player who has earned starting time on the Chiefs and the Bucs, or you go to a rookie in Cole Bishop, who is the presumed future starter at safety, but again, a rookie. There's some questions about how is it all going to look back there? Because if they're off their game, if they have communication lapses, if they get beat at times, that makes the job tougher for Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. And they can't get away with as many mistakes, because if they have a mistake, they might have to pay for it. So now you're relying on other guys to have to step up their game a little bit more. So it just creates some additional problems. And I guess I'll wrap it up like this. Pun not intended right there. But I have a lot of faith in Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich that they will maximize the ability out of whoever's playing in the secondary. If it's Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, I still feel like the Bills are going to get average at worst safety play, that they're not going to be bad. They have talent. They have guys that know the scheme. But on paper, if you just look on paper, this safety room is probably a bottom 10 unit in the NFL. And that was before the injuries. Now, that doesn't mean they were going to play as a bottom 10 safety unit. Knowing McDermott and Babich, they'd find a way to make Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards look into Pro Bowlers. But on paper, if you said that Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards or Rapp and Damar Hamlin were starting for the Carolina Panthers, and they didn't have Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich coaching them up, you'd probably say that team is in a tough situation at safety right now. Now, I like Taylor Rapp. I think he's gonna be solid this year, and I think whoever lines up against next to him is going to be solid as well. But we already entered training camp with safety being one of the positions on the team that was a perceived weakness, that there was some flaws, and now we've added 2 injuries to that room, and we've gone to a 36-year-old veteran as some depth and an unproven former third-round pick who hasn't been able to make his mark in 4 years. So if another injury happens, it could get a little bit murky. Now, the good news is these guys are week to week. Hopefully they'll all be back before the start of the regular season. And come September, we'll be like, that was really all for nothing.
Yeah.
But my view is, don't start the panic just because a few guys are hurt, but also don't diminish it and say it's nothing either. The fact is, like, there is reasons to be cautiously optimistic or slightly concerned, depending on if you're a glass half full or glass half empty person.
Very well said, Mike. Right, especially right at there at the end, because people can take this one way or the other. They could panic and say season's over. These guys are never going to figure it out, whatever. Or you can be the more prudent approach and be like, let's see how it plays out. Let's see what happens when the guys come back and everything else. That's where I'm at more with this than anything else. Injuries happen, especially in camp, and the week to week designation. While it seems, I feel like that's a bigger deal in the regular season than it is in camp. If you know that Edwards and Bishop are going to have prominent roles or potentially prominent roles on this team, you don't want to take any chances with rushing them back in camp to put them in a position battle. Like if you know that their roster spot's safe, like I feel like it's pretty safe to say that those guys are going to be on the team no matter what this upcoming year. Now Edwards, maybe could have been, I think he's like a $2.5 million dead cap or something like that if they wanted to cut him, or 3.5. I don't see that happening though, with the way they brought him in, and like you said, the competition that they've had between those two and Hamlin on the opposite side of Rapp. But it just feels like we shouldn't panic about these injuries early on in camp, because the best ability is availability, and clearly these are going to be guys who have roles week 1, week 2, week 6, whatever, and you'd rather have them fully healthy. Like I said, especially with the hamstring injury, man, like that's something you got to take with extra care. And I'd rather have Edwards get fully back to 100% before he even steps back on the field with something like that. So we don't have an issue where week 4, because he came back early, his hamstring still bothering him a little bit, and he's chasing somebody down the field and pulls up, and he has to pull up on his hammy, and he's out another 6 weeks, and it's nagging the rest of the year. And especially if he's playing well. So interesting to see where they're at there, but it happens. There's always some wrinkles that get thrown at you in camp. You just got to roll with the punches and everything else. But with Hamlin got the start on day 1 across from Rapp. He's been in that competition squarely. What has been your impression of Damar Hamlin in this training camp? Obviously, you mentioned the 5 games, the limited play last year, which was to be expected after the injury and the situation that he had, obviously. But 2 years ago, I was a big Damar Hamlin believer on Damar Hamlin Island. Loved seeing the plays that he started to make and really starting to get the rhythm that he really started to get in the opportunities that he had coming in for injuries in that year. It felt like he was finally figuring out the defense, not thinking about stuff as much, because his best asset to me is his aggressiveness at the safety position, and kind of a guy that if they want to play, kind of like they did last year with Poyer playing more in the box sometimes and going down low, which I don't know if they're going to do as much this year with Milano and Bernard, healthy and ready to go. But I feel like he kind of fits that mold perfectly, where Rapp can kind of be the free safety, the deep guy back with the interchangeability. And that's why they kind of gave that look a little bit. So what's been your impression of Hamlin so far? Like, does he look the part? Does he look like a guy who could be out there week 1 as a starter against Arizona?
Yeah, so I haven't paid too close attention to Damar Hamlin, but what I will say, he earned the ability to be part of this competition heading into training camp. He was strong during OTAs and mini camp. A lot of people, I think, and I've been victim of this as well, because I did a roster projection back in the spring, and I had him as a cut at that point in time. I think a lot of people have wrongfully talked down him as a player as a result of the incident that happened in Cincinnati, and that there's this perception that he's not really a good football player and doesn't know, that really isn't deserving of being on a roster. And I kind of find that a little crazy. We have a guy who was a 6th-round pick, who was a very solid fill-in player his second year after injuries to Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, was near the top of the team in tackles prior to the incident. And last year, obviously, the Bills took a cautious approach with him, as any team probably would, with some medical uncertainty following the incident that he dealt with. But Hamlin has talent. He's a good football player. And before what took place, I think he was looking like a guy that would be, at worst, a quality backup, and at best, someone that could challenge for a starting spot. So here we are entering 2024, and the Bills have him part of the competition. And I think he has shown he deserves to be in that competition. It'd be one thing if it was Damar Hamlin versus guys that were no doubt starters. Obviously, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer weren't going to lose their jobs to Damar Hamlin. But to think that Damar Hamlin can't be competition for Mike Edwards or Cole Bishop is a little crazy to me, because Mike Edwards, you're talking about a guy that has only started about 1/3 of the games he's played in his NFL career. I know there's some people on this app that love Mike Edwards, and he has talent, but Mike Edwards is not some bona fide great starting safety. He's been mostly a backup. Now he plays a lot. He gets a lot of snaps, but he's not some star in the NFL. And then Cole Bishop being a rookie, you have to earn your stripes. So I would say this about Damar. I think it's been a good early showing. I need to pay a little closer attention to him overall on an individual basis to see how he's doing in camp. But this is a great opportunity. He's going to be getting the reps with the ones for the future, for at least the next couple of weeks, unless somehow he looks really poor out there and one of the new coming safeties balls out. But other than that happening, like I think there's a really solid chance that we're talking Damar Hamlin versus Mike Edwards for one of the starting spots a couple weeks from now, whenever Edwards comes back. And if the better Damar looks, the more patient and the less they need to rush either of those guys back from injury. So best case scenario would be Damar comes out these next few weeks and really plays at a high level.
Well, let's hope for that. It would be an awesome story to see. And I think that he was playing some great football as that injury occurs. So it would be great to see him get back to that. And obviously it would be a big boost to the safety room that we were just talking about here. So the last topic that I had for you was the D-line, because the Von Miller, the hype train, as our cohort at Cover One, Aaron Quinn, has been proudly boasting along, is fully going. But Ed Oliver's also been looking good too. I've been seeing a lot of good reports about Ed Oliver just dominating the interior of the line. And I think you mentioned the run game not exactly clicking just yet. And I feel like Ed Oliver probably has been a big part of that with the way he's been playing. So Von Miller, how's he looking out there? Is he back? Is he back to full strength? Now, I'll preface this, and I maybe need to go back and find the clips from last year's podcast. And maybe it was on a show with you, but on with somebody on here. And I know I'm not the only one who said this, that those ACLs are 2 year injuries, man. And Von was we knew Von was, we knew by a little bit, wanted to believe that Von would be healthy, but knew a little bit by the middle of last summer and going into the season, like, all right, this guy, he's looking on the positive side. He's always going to be optimistic about where he's at and kind of where he is. But now we're at that year 2 of recovery. He said that he feels doesn't even think about the knee anymore, which is a huge thing. We don't think enough about, as fans, enough about the mental block of injuries, not the physical ailment itself. But if an athlete who's so used to their knee, working in one way and it feeling differently, how much that is to overcome. But overcoming in that second year of the injury, and he's looked like he's had the spark. He's got the bend again. What have you seen from the first couple of days that you've been at practice, and just from what the content and everything that you've consumed about Von Miller? Are you feeling as optimistic as everybody else about him?
Well, I thought I was feeling optimistic about Von Miller until I heard Aaron Quinn speak, and he's really optimistic about Von Miller. So I can't say I'm at Aaron Quinn levels or the levels of some of the guys that Cover One, but I do feel like he's going to have a bounce back season. Now, bounce back season, what is a good bounce back season for him? I'm not thinking double-digit sacks, because even before he came to Buffalo, that wasn't really something that was in the cards in recent years. Now, his first year with the Bills, he was going to get to double-digit sacks. He was having a quality season, probably would have ended up with around 12 or 13 sacks. So that would have been a great year for him. But around 35 years old, twice injured his ACL. It's tough for me to think that he's going to suddenly find some old version of himself. I could see him getting 5 to 7 sacks, be a pass rush specialist, be impactful in that role. I don't think the old Von Miller of just utter dominance throughout a game is coming back. And it's not just about the ACL. It's also at some point in time, you're going to decline as an athlete. He is not a young player anymore. He is in his mid 30s. And we saw last year, obviously, he was struggling to come back from the ACL. And given the extra year, normally you would expect there to be a little bit more of a bounce back because now he will get a little bit of that burst back and his athleticism will return, and obviously not thinking about it as much. But we're still talking about a player that is one of the older non-quarterbacks in the NFL at this point in time. And this is a young man's sport. So I know Aaron Quinn talks about him having the technique and that being able to outsmart tackles and get to the quarterback. The Bills still need some of that burst and bend. And if the bend doesn't come back, it's not going to make a difference. So I expect to bounce back, but I'm gonna keep them a little bit level. And that's also because I like the other defensive ends the Bills have. I'm a big fan of Greg Rousseau. I really like what AJ Epineza can do with some more snaps. So it's not even a bad thing for Von. It's just kind of accepting like Father Time eventually gets you. And I expect it to slow him down a little bit, but still be pretty decent overall.
Well, you said 5 to 7. Maniac has him at 6 to 8. So I think you're both in the same range of expectations. That's about where I'm at too. Like I'm not expecting Von Miller's superstar best defensive end in the league again. But if he can be a guy, if he can get to 8, if he can get to 10, I mean, that'd be a high number. But if he can replace,
if you can get to 10 right now, sign me up. Home run. This would be the fun thing to do. If Von Miller gets you 10 sacks, you go into next year being like, oh, maybe we can keep him another year.
Yeah.
Maybe he still does have value at this point of his contract. Have Von have the type of season that makes you think about a decision going forward.
Yep.
Because at the end of last season, there really wasn't a decision. It was just, well, we can't do anything about it. But if you're thinking about like, oh, maybe we could get another year out of Von, that means he's still producing. That's what I'll take. I would love that decision right now.
Yep, and we got to replace that production from Floyd somewhere. And so if it's right on the roster with the other star lineman that you had, we'll take it all day. We'll take that. But I think 5 to 7, 5 to 8 is the range. And I think if it's 7 sacks, we put it right in the middle there, 7, 6.5. That's a good season. And that with what you expect from a Rousseau this year, with how Epineza has just gotten better every year. Who knows what he could look like this year? And the guy on the screen here with Von Miller, Ed Oliver, who apparently has just been destroying the offensive line every chance he gets. How has Ed Oliver looked for you? And is this a year where Ed takes another step and becomes one of the clear best interior defensive linemen in the whole league?
Yeah, Ed was a monster early on. I remember, I think it was maybe the first run play of team drills and tackle like 3-4 yards in the backfield for a loss. He was all over the place early in practice, making plays at the line of scrimmage, showing that last year was no fluke and that was more than just earning his contract and carrying that momentum forward. I think Ed is going to be a monster once again this year. He's a guy that found what we all knew there was that untapped potential. He found that untapped potential last year. He knows what he's capable of doing. I think, yes, there's always the possibility he's going to regress. If he did regress and went down a few sacks, not the end of the world, especially at D tackle. But I think we're seeing a guy that is showing he is in the upper echelon of defensive tackles in the NFL, regardless of what PFF grades him, regardless of whatever metrics people want to say to put him down. He is absolutely deserving of his contract that Brandon Beane gave him last offseason. And so far, early in practice, he's been one of the top players on the Bills defense, absolutely standing out, especially, like I said earlier today, with the pads on.
You love to see that, especially with the pads on, especially that, just to him wreaking havoc. If he can do that all year long. It helps every part of that defense. It helps those edges we were talking about be able to get to the quarterback better. It's going to help that run game, help those linebackers clean stuff up, and help that secondary, give that quarterback less time with the ball, and it'll help that secondary out too. I think I'm a firm believer of building in to out, right in the trenches starting out, and Ed Oliver is a huge key to this team if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. So as we wrap up here in the last couple minutes, Mike, any other thoughts, anything we missed, anything on your notebook? Empty it out here for the end of the show. If there's any other big impressions.
Yeah, I mean, you say notebook, but what you really mean is my notepad on my cell phone on my iPhone. Here's just a few things that I would say. I wrote down first thing on 7-on-7. Kyer Elam has actually looked pretty solid so far.
Hell yeah.
He's had some flashes. I know some people have alluded to, could he overtake Christian Benford? That's not even a thought in my head right now. To me, Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, lock them in as the starting corners. And if I'm wrong about that, I'll gleefully eat my words before the regular season. But Kyer has looked solid. He had one play during 7-on-7. He was reading Josh Allen's eyes, broke, nearly had an interception, nice deflection for an incompletion. So I want to give him some props because this offseason, it's a pivotal one for him to really show that he deserves a place as someone competing for a starting spot in the NFL. So that's good to see. The second note, like I said, Kareem Jackson, one of the Bills' 2 new safeties that were recently signed. I saw him with the third team earlier today, so not really getting much of an opportunity, at least early on after signing. Maybe there's a little bit of a transition period to get him back up to speed. Samuel getting carries, that's no surprise. That's to be expected with Joe Brady being the offensive coordinator. You're going to see a lot of that. But today he had a nice touchdown run in red zone drills. Zach Davidson, number 4 tight end, could he be competing for the number 3 spot with Quinton Morris? I don't know, but Davidson had 2 touchdowns today when I was watching. He's made a mark. He looks solid. Joe Biscaglia is talking about him in his recaps. So that's something maybe pay attention to in preseason and see if he continues to flash. I wrote down D-line looking strong at Oliver, so you just hit on that point. And then the last thing, I saw 3 players today, 2 of which went to the tent. I saw the other Mike Edwards was in the tent, same with Lau Collins, and then Dawkins had to walk away temporarily, but he returned and was back on the field. So my last takeaways is if you're a fan of offense, the Bills are showing it early. Now, that could be one of a few things. It could mean the offense is great like it always has been, or it could mean there might be some concerns with this defense. Right now, I'm going to choose to believe the offense is just on fire early in camp, and it has me very excited about how it might look this season because there's been a lot of people across the nation doubting the Bills without Stephon Diggs, without Gabe Davis, and I actually think they might be in some ways better positioned to actually to be a better offense overall. Maybe not statistically. Maybe they won't score the same amount of points as they did last year. But situationally, I think they have more ways to attack teams, which in big moments in playoff games when you need that 4th and 2 or when you need to score a touchdown in a pivotal situation, I think I trust this unit more than I trust last year's unit.
Well, and you mentioned the points, and maybe they don't score as many points as last year, but also stylistically with this team, if this defense, if it stays the way where the offense is clearly the better unit and it's not as much of a balanced team, I don't think Sean McDermott is afraid to give the keys to this offense and let them be a team where they're playing fast pace, where they want to play rather than playing games in the low 20s or something like that, or mid 20s. They want to be a team that scores, trying to get to 30, 35 points a game and kind of up that offensive, maybe not the tempo or everything, but just knowing that they need to play to their strength and play with their fastball, and that fastball is Josh Allen. Something I've been calling for, but they haven't really needed to do it the last couple of years. This might be the first year that it actually is the best overall chance to win, because that if that defense is lagging behind it all, I do think the defense is going to catch up, and I think it's because of that defensive line. I really think once we get the pads on and into these games, if Ed Oliver is playing like this during the season, if Von Miller can be back to a contributor, Rousseau and Epineza continue to progress the way that they have through their careers, Jones gets back healthy. I've seen some good stuff from Dwayne Carter. Very excited about that for the big man inside. If that defensive line can dominate the way that I feel like they have the potential to do, and you have those stud linebackers behind them who could be, Bernard and Milano could get there. Milano obviously has the hype. He has the all-pro resume and everything else, but Bernard could be a breakout star of the year. I think being more on people's radars after last year's thing. If you have those two guys in that defensive line, I think this defense could be really, really good. And our secondary questions won't even matter because the defensive line is going to be dominating games. And that's been the vision. I think that's been the vision for how many years, right? Like that's why they've taken all these swings at DNs all these years and invested so many day 1 and day 2 picks into this defensive line, because the vision is get pressure with 4 and let everybody else in the back end kind of do the work that they need to do. And feels like we're going into another year where that group is very well set to do that again.
I mean, they've had this strategy for several years now, and they have executed that vision at a very high level. The issue is in recent years, the injuries, and then come playoff time, they're not able to execute that vision. So that's really what you're hoping for, is that you get better health going forward, that you don't have untimely injuries, because last year they had 50 plus sacks. They were creating takeaways. And yes, the defense had a step down overall once Milano was out, Daquan was out, several other guys, Trey was out. But really, it comes down to staying healthy. And this front seven is very, very dangerous. But they're always an injury or two away from the entire vision being gone. And when you have smaller linebackers, durability is always going to be a question mark. And yes, they have more depth behind Bernard and Milano, but a lot of the Bills' hopes rest on Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano being healthy when it matters the most. Those guys are out. Even one of them out changes things pretty quickly. Milano and Bernard, you have the ability to cover. You have the ability to attack. This defense is all about being aggressive, which is funny because a lot of people like to talk about Sean McDermott about being a conservative coach, that even when the numbers don't even back it up offensively, he's an aggressive coach. He goes for it on fourth down. Defensively, you ask every player in the secondary, why is this secondary consistently good on a year-in, year-end basis? And you know what they tell you? It's because we're aggressive.
Yep.
We're very aggressive. And it's a system that a lot of players, defensive backs, love to play in. And so I laugh when I hear stuff like, oh, it's prevent defense. It's letting guys get the yards. Like, yeah, I mean, do you watch much NFL coverage, NFL teams in 2024, 2023? Offenses get their yards. Like, that is part of the game when you play mostly nickel. Like, it's a different game now. But yeah, overall, I like the potential of this defense. But I think the difference, what's going to ultimately decide if it's a top 5 versus maybe a top 10 or middle of the pack defense is going to be health. If they stay healthy, I think they will be around that top 5 ranking. If they have injury issues, if they have any guys going down, I could see them being a 5 to 10 defense.
All right. Well, we've had, hopefully this is the year we get a good luck with health. We've had a couple rough years, key injuries at key times. So yeah, hope we stay healthy, but I'm excited of what I hear from you at that camp. I'm excited what I've seen from everybody, and we'll be back next Tuesday. That's our normal day, and we'll be at Tuesdays pretty much the rest of the year. I think this is the only scheduled Thursday around my vacation time, and it worked out perfectly because you were at camp today and now you're back home, got your full thoughts on being there on the ground at St. John Fisher. So shout out to you, Mike. You're crushing it there. Glad you have that opportunity to do what you love and be there on site.
And let's shout out the content too. Like if you haven't seen what Trainwreck has come out or what I've come out with, go follow Trainwreck Sports on Twitter right now, on Twitter, on Instagram. We got a ton of stuff right now. We got sound from Josh Allen today at practice. I had a one-on-one with Terrell Bernard. Daquan Jones spoke. Bobby Babbitt spoke. We have some video from practice, what they allow us to film. And then we even have a recap with AJ Sobalski of the Batavia Daily News. So lots of content. Please check it out at Trainwreck Sports. We're growing something here, and we want all of you guys to be able to share in it and enjoy it.
Well said. As always, this train never stops, and we have paid the bills. Shout out to our sponsor, Picasso's. Order nationwide anywhere. Football games are starting up. Get that Picasso's there for your next game. Preseason action right underway right now. Right now, football is underway. The Hall of Fame game has started. Back. We will not have a week without football until February, so enjoy it.
Love it.
Enjoy it. All right. We paid the bills. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will be back next Tuesday to talk more Bills training camp. Have a good one, folks.